As a building professional, you may be finding yourself conversing about kilowatts and kilowatt hours and not really knowing how to articulate the difference between the two. Don't worry, you're not alone. Power versus energy is a confusing topic. By the end of this segment, you will understand the difference between power and energy and how they are related. Be familiar with the common units of power and energy. Understand how solar module power ratings relate to their efficiency. Understand how a PV system's variable power translates to the energy it produces. And lastly, understand the significance of specific yield as it relates to architectural solar. So, what is power? Power is the rate at which work is done or energy is transferred. It's an instantaneous measurement. In solar energy, we most regularly see power expressed as kilowatts. Utilities view power as demand. This is because it dictates how large their generation capacity needs to be. In the case of a light bulb, its power rating tells us how bright it shines. Its brightness is how fast it's transferring electricity into light. A solar module's power rating is typically expressed in watts. Its power rating tells us how much power it will produce under standard test conditions. A combustion engine's power rating is typically expressed in the units of horsepower. The larger the engine, the more power it can produce. So, what is energy? Energy is the potential to do work. Energy requires power for a given amount of time. It is most simply expressed as power multiplied by a period of time. When one increases the rate at which energy is consumed, less time is required to consume the same amount of energy. For instance, a 1 kilowatt load operating for 10 hours is equivalent to a 10 kilowatt load operating for 1 hour. In both instances, 10 kilowatt hours of energy are consumed. Ultimately, energy is analogous to the amount of coal you consume when turning on a light bulb, the size of a battery, or the volume of a gas tank. The larger the volume of the fuel source, the more potential it has. The more powerful the load and the longer it lasts, both impact the energy that is consumed. To truly understand the difference between power and energy, we need to dig into the units of each. Power is the rate at which work is done. Work, also known as energy, in its most basic form is expressed as a joule. Since power is a rate of energy, in its most basic form, it is expressed as a joule per second. A joule per second is equivalent to a watt. Watts are the most common unit of power in renewables. We don't typically use joules as a unit of energy because they are difficult to equate to watts. Instead, we use watt hours. It is much easier to equate 1 watt to 1 watt hour because it is 1 watt of power running for 1 hour. 1 watt hour of energy is equivalent to 3,600 joules. This is quote unquote easy to remember because there are 3,600 seconds in an hour and 1 watt is a joule per second. The joule to watt hour conversion makes things confusing on the surface, but hopefully the foundational knowledge will help the concept click into place. Next, it is important to understand prefixes to a watt and a watt hour. Kilo equates to 1,000 times. Mega equates to 1 million times. Giga to 1 billion. And tera to 1 trillion. Therefore, 1,000 watts equals 1 kilowatt. 1 million watts are equal to 1 megawatt. And 1,000 kilowatts are equal to 1 megawatt as well. 1,000 megawatts are equal to a gigawatt. 1,000 gigawatts are in turn equal to 1 terawatt. And this same logic applies to watt hours, kilowatt hours, megawatt hours, gigawatt hours, and terawatt hours. Next, I would like to bring the scale of these units into view. Solar panels are rated in watts, and as of today, typically range in size from 300 to 700 watts. Typical residential installations range from 1 to 15 kilowatts, but can certainly get larger in certain instances. Commercial and utility scale installations cover a wide range of sizes. Shown here is a list of 5 large scale installation types that provide a sense of scale for what is possible today. For example, Google has completed a 7 megawatt solar roof tile installation. Six Flags has plans to install a 12 megawatt solar carport in 2024. A 17 megawatt rooftop installation on Apple Park was completed in 2017. There is a 30 megawatt rooftop install on Tesla's new Gigafactory in the works as well. And one of the US's largest utility scale installations is 875 megawatts. Since energy is equivalent to power times time and represents a volume of fuel, it makes sense that kilowatt hours are how we rate a battery's capacity. As a point of reference, a typical starter battery in a car holds about 1 kilowatt hour of energy. A typical electric vehicle may have a battery ranging from 40 to 150 kilowatt hours. A typical residential battery system may range from 5 to 60 kilowatt hours. And a utility scale battery system can be upwards of 5,000 megawatt hours. Keep in mind, we will likely see these numbers grow in the years to come. Now that you have a basic understanding of power and energy, I invite you to familiarize yourself with your utility bill, and if possible, a commercial utility bill as seen here. Commercial utility bills are a bit more complex than residential bills because they can incorporate both a demand charge and an energy charge. Residential bills typically only consist of an energy charge. Demand, which is synonymous with power, is billed in dollars per kilowatt. Energy is billed in dollars per kilowatt hour. Demand charges are a reality because utilities need to supply capacity based on a property's power need, whether it has solar or not. In this instance, the utility is charging $17 per kilowatt for demand and 3.5 cents per kilowatt hour for energy. Demand is equivalent to the maximum power that your property requires during the billing period. In this instance, the maximum demand that the property hit was 163 kilowatts. Each utility calculates maximum demand differently. This particular utility utilizes a 15-minute average, meaning the property's power could have been shut off for the entire month except one 15-minute period where the average demand was 163 kilowatts and the customer still would have been charged for the demand. Unfortunately, it's difficult to know whether a solar system will offset demand or not. Therefore, financial analyses typically negate this offset potential. To fully offset demand, batteries are required to ensure that power can be deployed consistently throughout the day and night to level out demand spikes. On the other hand, assuming the utility allows net metering, energy is fully offsettable by solar because it is accounted for based on a simple net equation. When a solar system may overproduce energy during the day, the meter rolls backwards, and then at night, it rolls forwards, resulting in the net billed amount. This enables a full offset of the bill's energy charge. Bills with high energy charges and low demand charges are preferable for solar. Several utilities have programs that enable property owners to switch rates once a solar system has been installed. These rate switches can provide savings by lowering demand charges at the expense of increasing energy charges. When those same energy charges are offset by solar, rate changes like this can prove to be very lucrative. Hopefully, this utility bill example helps solidify the difference between kilowatts and kilowatt hours and provides context to how solar can provide savings. Now that you understand the differences between power and energy, let's dig into the concept of power as it applies to solar module ratings. Solar modules are rated at standard test conditions. STC ratings provide us with a means of comparing one solar module to another, but they don't tell us how much energy they will produce because actual weather conditions vary from location to location. Standard test conditions assume an irradiance of 1,000 watts per meter squared. A solar module's efficiency is a measurement of the percentage of the sun's power at STC that can be converted into electricity. A 1000 watt module that was 1 meter squared would be 100% efficient because it would be utilizing 100% of the sun's power at standard test conditions. Therefore, module efficiency can be determined by dividing a panel's power rating by 1000 times its area in meters squared. The module seen here is 1.8 square meters and 360 watts. 360 divided by 1800 is 20%. When estimating a building's energy potential, it is helpful to put module power in terms of per unit area or power density. In its most basic form, this is done by dividing module power by its area. That said, one may want to relate efficiency to power density. To get from efficiency to power density is easiest with metric units. You simply add a zero. A 20% efficient module produces 200 watts per square meter. This is because 200 watts is 20% of 1000 watts. Should you want to get from watts per square meter to watts per square foot, you would divide by 10.76 square feet per meter squared. Since sunlight varies from hour to hour, day to day, season to season, and location to location, a module's STC rating only gets us so far. To understand the yearly energy production of a solar array, the designer needs to account for all the project-specific parameters that impact performance. On a sunny day, an optimally oriented solar array's power curve would look something like the curve shown here. Power is expressed as the red line. The system's energy production is expressed in blue. The power peaks in the middle of the day, and the energy delivered over the full day is equivalent to the area under the curve. This is because energy is equal to power times time, the area under the curve. When analyzing one architectural surface versus another, the most valuable performance metric available to us is specific yield. Specific yield is the ratio between the total annual energy produced by a solar system and the STC DC system power. Specific yield accounts for a site's location, typical weather, and the system design parameters. It can be attained by inputting system parameters into a tool like NREL's PV Watts, setting array power to 1 kilowatt. This is such a valuable performance metric because it can be quickly analyzed for each of a building's potential surfaces. You might be wondering what sort of ranges should be expected for specific yield. Based on NREL solar irradiance data, Seattle, Washington serves as a good worst-case solar scenario in the lower 48 states. Phoenix, Arizona, on the other hand, serves as a good benchmark for some of the best-case irradiance. In addition to these two location bookends, we have identified tilt and azimuth bookends for 3 applications: a vertical facade, a typical roof mount PV system tilted at 10 degrees facing south, as well as an array tilted at a site's latitude. As one varies location and orientation within the lower 48 states, specific yield can range from 500 kilowatt hours per kilowatt to 1800 kilowatt hours per kilowatt. Note, these figures are rounded to the nearest 100 kilowatt hours per kilowatt. Given the range of possibilities and the potential for some surfaces to be more prevalent or easier to integrate with, it is critical that specific yield be well understood for each array. Once specific yield is defined for each surface, the area of each surface can be multiplied by a technology's power density to determine the total power available for each surface. By multiplying the array's specific yield by its STC power, the first year of energy production can then be quantified. In the content to come, we will dig into estimating PV performance in PV watts. But until then, I encourage you to explore its potential.